My legacy. So why do I do all of this? I feel that accounting professionals are sitting on a wealth of information that's essential for a business to be successful, but too often they're very quiet and non-responsive as to what's going on in the business to help the business owner. I really feel too often the accounting information is essential and critical to the success of the business. They're just not sharing it, but yet they're aware of it. And as accounting professionals, to give them a voice so that they actually have this empowerment to say, I have something to say and I have the right to say it, I should say it, I think is a change to the accounting profession. And that's one of the things that I'd like to bring as my legacy to the accounting profession, is that the accountant has a voice.
So what is your legacy as far as the business goes?
So I've learned a number of things working with other business owners, and some of the things that they have done where they've been successful have resonated with me. And the first thing is just finding passion. It's where in me do I find that energy, that drive to show up to work every day and do something. I'm looking for what keeps me engaged that other people can tap into. I sometimes describe it like the Energizer Bunny. If I'm contagious as to the energy I'm bringing, other people can kind of feed off of that and get excited about what they're doing as well, especially how they're contributing to the whole process in business. So for me, as I look at just being successful in business, it all starts with the passion. And it's behooving to me to have vision to know, okay, why are we doing this? Where are we going? What this is all about? And that vision is what drives me. And one of the things that I try to do is just recharge, recommit myself, re-energize myself. And that's where it all starts in my mind. From there, I think one of the biggest things then is just quality. Just paying attention to the details. And I know that a lot of people sometimes get overwhelmed by the details. They freeze because they feel like they need to be so attentive to the details. I'd like to think I am attentive, but I'm also not restricted. I'm trying to make things happen, and I sometimes get accused of making things seem too simplistic and overly simplistic in time and effort. Well, that's my way of simply saying, I think it can be done, it's doable, but from a quality point of view, I'd like to think that we're delivering a quality product, a quality training, a quality experience, and that's one of the things that's also very important to me.
What about commitment as far as your legacy goes?
Commitment, it's very simple. When you're in business and you're trying to actually achieve your goals, the things that you've set forth and have visions to doing, it takes sacrifice. And oftentimes it's personal sacrifice, time, you're giving up an opportunity to maybe participate in something. Commitment sometimes means you have to step in and do something for a customer just to make them happy. There are things that I feel a business owner who's committed that they're willing to do to make things happen as they should really makes a difference between someone that's indifferent and I'm just trying to do what I need to make things work. No, I'm trying to make things not just happen, but happen well and successfully for the company and for the customer. So when it comes to commitment, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. The long days, the long hours, and I'm excited about it. I enjoy it. I don't mind working late or working weekends. It's not that I'm expecting it all the time, but when it's necessary and needed, it's necessary and it's needed, and that's enough said.
Knowledge of the numbers and personal time.
Okay, so knowledge of the numbers, this is a huge one for me. I mean, clearly we're in accounting school, and so I talk a lot about financials and numbers, KPIs, key performance indicators. I mean, all that comes up. But when I've worked with successful individuals, they do know their numbers and they are watching the numbers. And one of the things that I think is important when looking at being successful is what are those things that ultimately matter most? Is it the cash flow? Is it the financials? Is it online reviews? What are those metrics that I'm watching that everyone should be looking at? And it's unique for a business, but nonetheless, there are a few key numbers that everyone needs to know. And for those that are successful, inevitably, I'm going to have a conversation with them and they're going to bring up, these are the essential things that they watch and track that determine whether or not they're successful. It's kind of like a game or a race. Quantifiably, they're able to say yes or no, they did what they hoped and how they outperformed what they expected. And they can celebrate those successes. And so knowledge of the numbers is key. To just cross your fingers, kind of hope that things are going to happen, to at the end of the day, wonder whether or not you were successful. No, you need to have a definitive way of saying, this is how we define success. This is whether or not we did it. And if that's the case, then you're running, I think, a very successful business because you either are or aren't doing what's expected of you.
A few minutes ago, you talked about commitment.
Yeah.
And us as business owners, people as business owners need to be willing to do whatever it takes. But at the same time, I know that balance is important to you. So talk about your commitment to the company versus your personal time.
Yeah, so I talked about passion to begin with. There's a lot of energy that goes into that, commitment, the willingness to do whatever it takes, and I mentioned sacrifice. I do believe to be successful, you have to be willing to sacrifice. Something will have to give, and that's where you prioritize things. And there's something that I learned early in my life that said there's a time and a season for all things. And so it's not that I need to be doing everything at once. I can be a good father, a good husband, a good employer, a good employee. There are a lot of things that sometimes might need my attention, whether it's my children, my spouse, work, and in those situations, I need to be willing to sacrifice something so I can give it attention. So that brings me to personal time. I don't know that I necessarily believe in balance. Balance implies there's 24 hours in a day or 7 days in a week. I should be giving half my time to business, half my time to personal. I mean, I just don't know how people rationalize the term balance. But I will say that I work hard and I play hard. When I work hard, I'm all in. I try not to be distracted by things that are either personal or family. I'm focused. And when I'm at home or with family, I try not to do work things. I say try because I'm not perfect at all of this, but I do play hard. I play often and I do things that I think recharge me and help me step away from certain situations that honestly, when I remove myself, I sometimes find the answers. Ahas or epiphanies come when I'm no longer kind of enveloped in the situation. So I find that valuable time spent. So those personal time moments sometimes bleed into business things because I'll have those ideas that I need to write down and record, but they're rejuvenating to me. And so people matter, my family matters, and so I don't want to neglect them. And although I recognize sacrifices are needed, I'm wanting to prioritize them so that on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, there's things I'm doing as to vacations, personal times, and so forth. So yeah, passion huge, commitment big, but personal time necessary.
So we've talked about your legacy as far as business goes, but what about your legacy in your personal life?
Oh, that's one of the things that matters most. I don't know how other people feel, but for me, it's important for just decision making. I've got to have kind of like standards or things that I use to kind of gauge whether or not a decision I'm making is good or bad or the right thing. Partly it's because of time management. I'm trying to figure out, okay, does this decision help me either further or accelerate what I'm trying to accomplish, or is it a distraction? Well, anyways, on a personal note, for me, all starts with what I refer to as God, faith, and religion. It's something that I taught my children. It's something that I emphasize a lot with individuals I speak. And it all just starts with, I do believe in a higher being, an individual to whom I'm responsible and accountable, that I believe at some point I will be asked for an accounting of my doings. And so, however that might be by other people, it just means I don't do things in a vacuum. I've got to presume that even when I think nobody else knows, I believe I know and someone else knows. And for me, that's important for God. And then faith basically just boils down to principles. I've got a code of ethics. I try to be honest in my dealings. I try to be truthful in what I say. I'd like to think I'm striving to be a better person, and so that's very important to me, and my faith, I believe, contributes to that. And then for religion, it's just, I feel like I need to be involved in an organized effort to collaborate with individuals that are of common beliefs and see what I can do to serve. Who can I help? Who can I best kind of assist? Give back to my community. And for years, I've been involved with my youth organization in the area, and it's been very rewarding to see young men that I've been associated with grow. It's just nice to be involved in something at a community level, to realize that I'm contributing to the society in which I live. And so for me, that's a big part of who I am and what I do. And so that's where everything starts for me.
So speaking of your personal life, how does your legacy apply to your family?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. Family, it's everything. Family is everything. It's where I spend my time. It's what I like to do. I've had friends, you know, you've got your high school friends, your college associations and friendships, your neighborhood. But at the end of the day, that constant thread, I believe, is family. They're going to be with me all the time. At my funeral, I had other people from my past show up. I'd be pleased, but I expect I'll have family there, right? They're the people that are going to be that constant thing. It's the blood is thicker than anything kind of philosophy. So I put a lot of time and effort into my siblings, my children, my spouse. I just feel that that's where my attention is needed. It's the individuals to whom I think I'm most influenced. They are the ones that influence me the most. So they give me happiness and joy, and I really get revitalized just being around them. So family is a big part of where I spend my time. I've got 3 children. The 3 children live nearby. I get to see them on a weekly basis, once or twice a week, and that matters a lot to me. If they weren't nearby and easily accessible, where I couldn't see my grandchildren, couldn't interact with them, that would be a huge loss for me. So very important.
Love that. What about financially with your personal life? What's your legacy or your goals there?
So I was raised with the idea that debt-free is the best way to live life. And I very rarely will go into debt. And I try to do this both in business and in my personal life. There's a lot of people that take advantage of loans and leveraging themselves, and I understand that that's the case, but for whatever reason I was raised that you're either earning or paying debt, and I'd rather be earning interest, right? So if I can earn interest and have my money work for me, that's the better way that I'd like to work than to borrow money and leverage money to the point that I'm indebted to other individuals and paying interest to everyone else. And so I've taught that philosophy. It's given me peace of mind. It's allowed me to, I feel, acquire a lot of things. At the end of the day, if I'm not paying interest on things, I'm not overpaying for what I'm buying, I believe. So yeah, I can get it on a sale, but if I'm putting it on a credit card and paying the minimum payments and paying the interest rate, at the end of the day, I paid full price, if not more, for something. So if I don't have it, I don't buy it. It reminds me of a SNL skit where Steve Martin is talking about, if you don't have the money, you don't buy it. And I think that just was the epitome of it, the epiphany of, if you don't have the money, you don't buy it, is as simplistic as you can put this.
Before we move on, tell me about the wheels in life and business that I've heard you talk about in the past.
So, great question. Wheels of life and business. I learned this a number of years ago, and it's basically a visual way of representing whether or not you're in balance, like you were asking earlier, with things as it relates to life and personal life and business. And here's how I found that it's very relative to the clients that I work with. Whenever I'm working with business owners, or even in my case, running the business, and I find things are off in business, so often it's an extension of someone's personal life being out of whack. And what I mean by that is if someone's life is in order, they can put a lot of time and effort into work and business. But when personal lives, whether it's health or relationships or something, isn't as it should be, those things distract someone from being focused on their work. And so the wheels of life and business basically look at the traditional things that you would expect, on a personal life. Do you have hobbies? Do you spend time on physical development, mental development, let's say spiritual development? And how do you feel you are with your relationships? Well, when you gauge those and say, well, my relationships with my spouse on a scale of 1 to 10 is a 7, 8, 9, okay, we're doing great. But if we're on a 3, 4, 5, obviously it needs attention. Well, when you go through those people that are important to you in your life, such as your parents, your siblings, say your friends, you can assess, where have I been sacrificing and where do I need to maybe step things up a little bit? Well, when those things start to really fill in, then you have the bandwidth to then focus on business. And it's the same thing with business. You're looking at marketing, you're looking at selling, you're looking at technology, you're considering staffing, you're looking at benefits that you're perhaps offering your employees. It's where do you sit with your customers, customer retention, and you're assessing those various elements in business. And when you do that, you can see what is doing well and what can you be comfortable with, and using the philosophy of systems to grade, what may have worked 6 months ago may need attention today, or maybe you've learned something that can improve something that you're doing and make it more efficient. So those wheels of life and business are just a visual way of sitting down and reassessing of all the things that I'm responsible for on a personal and professional level. How am I doing? Am I juggling everything well? It's kind of like, I've seen the analogy of the person who's managing the plates that are on the end of a stick and you're spending the time tossing them. Well, you can only manage so many before you start dropping plates. So one person in their life today may be able to manage 3 plates in the air. Somebody else at this point in their life, because they're more organized or whatever, they have systems in place that they can manage 6, 7, 8 plates. Don't do more than you can manage. Do what you're able to well, and you'll be fine.
So how would you explain your journey in climbing the corporate ladder at UAC?
It was a different experience. I had to build the ladder and the wall. So yeah, everything started clearly 25 years ago plus with Universal Accounting. So it's been some time, and maybe I'll get a legacy watch, for being here as long as I have, a career watch. Nobody really works at a place 25 plus years, but here I am. It started where I began doing placement for individuals basically as temp hire, permanent placement. It was being a recruiter, and I was taking graduates from Universal Accounting and I was placing them on assignments, and it was working well. The clients that I had that were using the graduates loved these individuals. They were clearly skilled and capable. So I'd come back to the school and get the next graduating class, find out of those individuals who was looking for employment and try and place as many as I could, and that's how I was making my money. Well, as I got acquainted with the school, I got to know the owner and the business model, and they asked me to do some consulting. The consulting quickly turned into an employment opportunity, and this was probably one of the big things for me in my life, because I realized this was an opportunity that my wife was encouraging me to take. And at this point in my career, I had side gigs. I had a lot of individuals I knew around me that were doing like the MLM kind of opportunities. It was, you have a day job and you're trying something to maybe with a second job or opportunity on the side. It was now everything was going to be universal. I was going to remove all those distractions and just go all in. And interestingly enough, there were times early on in my career here at Universal that I'd come into the office at 5:30 in the morning. I would leave at 6, 7 at night. I was doing everything to make sure this would be a success. I was dedicated to be the first person in and the last person out. And it was kind of a workaholics approach. It was a work ethic that I felt that if I just did everything, things would start happening. And they did. I clearly was committed, and I think that was noted, and successes started to occur. So it all began with me removing the distractions and going all in.
So what did that growth look like? What was one of the first big things that happened at UAC? Departments started, or changes that you made as part of your journey?
Well, when I first started with Universal, it was a traditional school, classroom environment, classroom instruction. And one of the things that they saw that I could bring to the table is I had a telemarketing background. I'd worked for nearly a decade in telemarketing, and I had an understanding of how that business model worked. Well, coincidentally, we were recording the classroom instruction with the intent of repurposing it. And this has happened over the decades now of Universal, but we would teach the class and record it eventually for independent study. Well, that's where it all started. We were taking the instruction with the intent of creating a library, and it was merely meant at that time to replace individuals who were missing classes and needed to not get behind. They needed to stay caught up. And the recordings were simply done as a way of saying, okay, here's what we taught that day, and if you couldn't attend because of a birthday party or a vacation, you wouldn't get behind. And this was partly to help with enrollments. People had excuses as to why they would wait till the next class. Well, this addressed that. It also helped people who were struggling with a concept. I didn't learn or understand what was taught. Can I check that video out and maybe watch it? Well, we started to realize that the videos were not just complementing the live instruction. The videos were actually, in some people's minds, better than the live instruction because they could rewind it, pause it. And so we had individuals that, as much as they liked the live class, they saw value just checking out the videos. Well, clearly as an entrepreneur, you start to recognize, okay, this has potential. We saw that instead of having to open up one more classroom somewhere else, we at that point had nearly 20 campuses around the US. Why not, instead of doing campuses with the fixed costs of a classroom, teacher, and so forth, why don't we now look and see if we could package this as an independent study course? We did, and it worked. Put it on VHS, sent it out, and my job was to call and talk to people that weren't near campuses, and it worked very well. We were able to generate leads on the internet. We were able to call them. Literally, I was working off of sheets of paper that had contact information, and there wasn't like a CRM, anything digitally. We had piles of paper that we were just dialing off of and making notes as to the conversations. And it was quite fun because you would take a piece of paper physically and move it in various stages as to where we were with the individuals in the call. Were they interested, not interested? Were they wanting to enroll? They did enroll. Okay, what do we do next? And it was literally an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that we were moving around in the office. Those were the good old days. And eventually we realized we had something here that we could really grow with. So I was given the opportunity to hire a telemarketing team of individuals to call the leads that we were generating, and that morphed from basically the campus being the mainstay of the business to where we ended up having more people enrolled in our independent study course than our campus courses. Well, that just opened up a whole new thing of opportunities. What could we teach independently rather than requiring them to come into a class? So we just started to test different classes. Some succeeded, some struggled. But that then led to a road department where rather than just telemarketing and speaking to people over the phone, we started to travel. And where we didn't have campuses, but there was a large population, we would go in and do seminars and trainings and offer those individuals the independent study courses. The company was growing. We were going from the regions that we were in to a national company, an international company, offering trainings around the world, and it was doing very, very well.
So what did the numbers look like from when you came on board to when you were given the opportunity to start the tele department to everything that exploded after that?
Oh, big change. So initially what it was is a class might have consisted at that time of say 20, 30, 40 individuals. Well, now we were having in a week 20, 30 people enroll in our training. So we went from maybe 20, 30 people a month in a class to we were having 20, 30 people a week in a class. That was a game changer because now the business model wasn't dependent upon so many people we could fit into a classroom, so many people that could attend at a certain time. The classes didn't have to start on a specific date. You could start on a Thursday, you could start on another Wednesday. It just was game changing because initially the classroom dictated when classes started, who could enroll, when they could attend, when they were taught. This was no longer relevant. And so as we transitioned from offering classes in a classroom to VHS, then DVD, I mean, I distinctly remember, and this was kind of humorous as I look back, we had banks of VCRs, just towers of VCRs that you'd have a master, and then you'd go put all these blank tapes in and press record, press play, and then record. You'd just go down the banks hitting record, and that's how you created the copies. Well, eventually there was a transition from VHS to DVD. Well, when do we make that switch? Do we start offering both? And there was a time that you could say when enrolling which you preferred. And then it got to a point where we got rid of the VHS and did totally DVDs. And there was a moment in time for about maybe 6 to 12 months, we would offer when you enrolled, if you were unable to watch the DVD because you still had a VCR, we would give you a DVD player with your enrollment. I mean, it was just a different time and age. And then we were going to go from DVD to, I think it was Blu-ray at the time. But just as that was an option, we had the opportunity to consider going to the internet. Well, bandwidth was an issue. I mean, you're dealing with dial-up. Clearly you couldn't deliver a video. And initially when we had the videos, it would come up on a computer screen in a small little window. It wasn't a full video that you could actually do, and the quality of it was very pixelated. So at what point do we move from a DVD quality video to something that was equal in delivery in a streaming environment? And that transition, when do we make the leap of no longer offering DVD and saying everything was available online? Yeah, these were evolutions that we had to make as a company and changes that we had to pay attention to with regards to technology. These were good times.
So 25 years of technology changes has made a big difference.
Oh yeah,
with employee count and the whole 9 yards, right?
Oh yeah, so we've gone from initially being a school with campus being the primary delivery medium, classroom, to where we no longer have classrooms. We no longer have campuses. It's entirely online now. And we do it very well. So the beauty of it is as a company, not only are we paying attention to market changes and technology changes, but it's demands of our customers. This is what they wanted. They didn't want to have to drive to a classroom. They didn't want to have to show up at 6 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock in the morning for a specific class time. They wanted to do it at their leisure, at their time, when they were most convenient, for the time that they could. Could I do it for 1 hour, 3 hours? They got to decide. And so it really liberated the whole learning environment and experience. So yeah, and then as for employees, yeah, we went from a handful of employees to nearly 50 employees, actually over 50 employees at one point. We did have some downsizing that we experienced, and then we've quickly grown back and are, I think we're back over 30 or so employees at this point, with many contract employees, contractors, not employees.
Super interesting. So I know personally that one of your passions is, well, you're very aware of the numbers, as you talked about earlier, and think that that's super important. So as far as the numbers go and being goal-driven, where have you taken the company as far as growth in their yearly financial goals?
As a president, I had to consider a number of things, and maybe we can talk about that transition from working in the company to becoming president. But yeah, numbers are everything. It's managing based on goals, based on budgets. It's managing based on where do we feel opportunity exists and working in that direction. But it's all, what can I quantify? And from that quantification, what can I manage? And if I measure it and I report it, I'm trusting that it will actually improve. And managing that way has allowed us to really, I think, accomplish a lot of goals. Some take much longer than we anticipate. Some come with their challenges that we don't anticipate. But we're working with purpose, with intent. There's a reason behind what we're doing. And at the end of the day, it kind of goes back to my legacy again. I do believe that the accounting profession needs individuals that are willing to share their perspectives, their insights, essentially being translators or interpreters for the accounting information they have access to. Accounting is the language of business. The accountant needs to be able to communicate that effectively to the business owners so that they can use that in the decision making that they're doing. If we can do that well as a profession, then we've actually taken and empowered the small business community with the information that's readily available, just not used.
As you were growing the company, I know the company hit several accolades. Talk to me about what those accolades were.
You bet. The idea behind accolades is very important. Honestly, we've received a number, and I don't want to be too boastful, but there's a lot of hard work that individuals have put into the business in order to achieve the successes that we've had. And it's nice to be acknowledged or recognized for that. So some of the ones that I'm really proud of is we initially were able to receive an Inc. 500 recognition, and then from that, numerous Inc. 5000 recognitions. And those are huge accomplishments. When you're able to say that nationally you're one of the fastest growing companies in the United States, one being less than 500, numerous times being one of the 5,000, that's a huge accomplishment, just to understand that you're competing against yourself. When you're considering that the successes you had 2-3 years ago are evaluated in this year's growth, you're basically running a race against yourself and trying to show that incremental improvement against you. Well, that's huge to say that the employees, the workflows, the processes that we're putting into place are being effective, and that's a big thing. Utah 100, we've received Utah 100 recognitions numerous times as well. Again, being one of the fastest growing companies in the state of Utah. That's a big thing to say about what we do here where our corporate offices are. So for us, it's not that the recognitions are things that we're striving for, but the acknowledgement, the recognition of the hard work that so many people have put in is something to be able to celebrate. And I'm one who struggles to celebrate. I'm typically looking at, okay, yesterday was successful, but there's still today, let's get to work. So often these successes come, say, a month after the fact, maybe a year later when it comes to like Inc. 500, Utah 100. It's last year we did this, and here we are celebrating something that was months and months and months ago. It's sometimes a struggle for me to give that kind of attention, but it's necessary, it's essential. Other people thrive on it, and I need to be conscious of the fact that they need that recognition to realize that what they do matters and what they do is making a difference.
So you alluded to this a little bit earlier, but what do you feel led to you becoming the president of Universal Accounting Center?
So it was nothing I was striving for, so I'll begin with that, but it is something that I'm internally grateful to have been given the opportunity to do. I was always content being the number 2 person. Somebody else had the vision, the direction, just point, and I was able to just kind of go. And it was very easy for me to be efficient and effective in that effort. To be given kind of a vision was, nice. Somebody else was running the company. But that individual one day came and said to management that he felt that we were coming with more ideas than he was, that we were pushing the company more than he was driving the company. And so he just basically felt that the time had come for him to step aside. It was an interesting acknowledgement on his part. He was at a point in life where I think this was great, and in hindsight, it worked phenomenally for him. It was perfect for him. But he realized he didn't really have that number 2 person identified. And so he was putting us on notice that he was going to be considering those in the management team as well as outside individuals for the position. And, I don't know how to respond to that. I don't know how the others chose to respond to it. It was just like, okay, keep doing what we're doing and see if anything stands out, see if the opportunity will present itself. There wasn't like an interviewing process. And what's curious is my recollection is he said that the transition was going to be months out. He was just kind of announcing it, and he didn't really have anything immediate that he wanted, but it came about quicker than he had alluded or anticipated. Just within a few months, he extended the offer to me, and I was very pleased and honored with that. But at the time, I didn't really know what that meant. I had not been a president before. Clearly, I liked the direction he had provided. I liked the management style he had offered. I felt I grew immensely under his tutelage, but that growth that I experienced was, something that I was going to now have to give to other people. So when that opportunity presented itself, I clearly took it. It was something that I took, but what happened on the day that it was announced was a company party. He basically said he was stepping aside and I would be taking the helm, and coincidentally I'd had a family cruise booked and I was leaving the next day.
You were?
I was. So I was put in as president of the company. He was no longer going to be in the office, and I literally left the next day. And it was amazing because generally, as you know, with my personal time, I try to decompress. I try to go enjoy things. I literally went on a cruise and found myself up on the top deck with my laptop, writing a memoir, a collection of my thoughts as it related to business, trying to figure out how I was going to drive the company, how I was going to be that visionary person that I felt I needed to be. I needed to find my foundation from within so that I could see, okay, where was I going with this? And it was very therapeutic for me to actually go through this exercise of saying, okay, I've got to go back to the office in a few days and be someone different than what they've known me as. It's not that I was going to be a different person, but I realized I needed to step up my game, if I could say it that way. And I needed to kind of not reinvent myself, but recommit myself. And that was a big deal to me.
So what were those, you come home from the trip, what were those first few months like?
They were hard. People were challenging me. People wanted to push the envelope, see what they could get away with. It was like working with kids. They wanted to see with dad gone, how would mom handle the situation type of thing. I felt as if people wanted to figure out, where would I draw my lines? How would I manage expectations? How would I deal with things that weren't being done? If somebody wasn't meeting their expectations, how would I discipline? How would I correct? How would I inspire them? And they pushed the envelopes. Some of them started to slack. They felt that maybe I wouldn't step up and hold them accountable. How would I hold them accountable? All those things were in the first, say, 6 to 12 months. It was a learning experience for them, clearly, but at the same time, obviously for me.
During those first few months, first 6 months, first year, what were some of the biggest changes that came about?
I needed to realize, and I don't know how many people understand this, we're an accounting school, we're creating curriculum, we're teaching people. I'm not a CPA, but initially everyone just thought I was a CPA. My formal training wasn't accounting. Now, to be very clear, I've gone through the accounting training. I've been under the tutelage of a CPA who was running the business, so understood the numbers in the accounting. So it wasn't, I was a fish out of water, but I was maybe experiencing a little bit of imposter syndrome. How do I step into a role where I'm running an accounting school, but yet I wasn't an accountant by trade? And I had to quickly come to terms with that myself. And I needed to find, how do I now run a business where I have key people, is just competent people around me that clearly can do their jobs, but now manage them and provide vision to them. And so for the first, I would say, couple of years, it wasn't that I was aimless, but I was trying to find my footing.
I've heard you say in the past that one of the pieces of advice that Alan gave you was to go to conferences.
It was.
How did that help you in that first year or whatever?
It was huge, so much so that it's one of the pinnacle things that I still stress today to myself, is I need to get out there. He said, you need to go to conferences, go to a few a year, and just pay attention to what's going on with the customers there, because our customers are those attendees, the accounting professionals. Who are they? What are they saying, doing? Just go and listen, expose yourself to our customer base. And I thought, well, that just makes sense. Go where my customers are. But he also said, go to the vendors, see what's going on in the industry, in the market, what's happening with the profession. And the vendors would be a great place to see what's new, what's exciting. And at the end of the day, day, what it really boiled down to is at the conference, I didn't know what I didn't know. So it wasn't that I was going with the intent of learning anything specific. It was, I was going with an open enough mind to say, what's going to stand out to me that I didn't realize? And with that, I don't know what I don't know mentality, I was always coming away from these conferences with new ideas, new insights, new business thoughts, things that help me professionally, things that help the business with regards to let's fill this void, let's fill this niche, let's go into this market. It was just revolutionary to me. I would always come back from a conference with wonderful new connections, excellent contacts, wonderful ideas, and I dare say I came back with more than I could ever implement, but that's the whole idea, I guess.
That's amazing. I think there are so many conferences I've been to where I've heard people say, walk out of a class or walk out of a conference saying, I'm not learning anything new. There's nothing here I don't know. So to hear you say you go into it with the goal of finding out what you don't know, that's huge. That's how you get what you want to get out of that conference.
I have a lot to say about that. First of all, you can go into a situation, I don't care if it's a restaurant, a play, a movie, somebody could walk out saying that was the dumbest thing, somebody will walk out saying that was life-changing, and it's all with the attitude that you go into it, I first feel. So if you go in with this open mindset of, I'm here to learn what I don't know that I don't know, I think you're much more teachable and you're willing to take on things that you wouldn't see otherwise. That arrogance that I think some people go into of, I already know this, I already know this, I already know this. Yeah, of course, you're in the career, 10, 20 years, of course there's a lot you already know. I'm not suggesting that you're going to learn 100% new things, but it is that golden nugget, that 2% that you weren't expecting, that when you come away with that, it can be hugely profound in your trajectory of business, professionally, personally. Those are the things I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the obvious. Now, that said, there's a lot of things I know, but I'm reminded at the conference, like, I totally forgot about that. Or I learned it and it wasn't relevant, but today I'm hearing it again and now it's relevant. And that's what I'm looking for is, oh yeah, I forgot about this, I need to do it. So yeah, if you go in and you have that arrogant mindset, you just don't find value in anything that you're hearing. But if you go in with that open mindset, it's enlightening what it is you're going to come away with.
And game changing.
Yep.
So I've heard you say, and I know personally, that Alan is one of the biggest mentors in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to know what, I've heard you talk about sacred cows.
Yeah.
So what did you learn from Alan? What do you still do in the business or honor in the business because of what you learned from him?
So there's two things here. The sacred cows, those are specifically things where I asked him at the very beginning, is there anything I can't change? Now you have to realize, when I became president, I wasn't the principal shareholder. So he and others were shareholders and I was beholden to them still. So I had to say, okay, I'm now president, is there anything I can't do? And that was very important to me to understand where these boundaries were. I didn't know what to expect, but he did say a few things. You can't change this, you can't change this, and you can't change this. And that was very important to me. But what was very astounding is how few there were. I think there was probably 3 to 5 things that he said, don't change this. I would highly advise, don't do this. And I was like, great, that was good advice, and I wanted that, and I heeded it. But he was very willing to say, anything else, sky's the limit. Change whatever you want, do whatever you want, go wherever you want, do whatever. I mean, it was just very liberating to hear him say, you're the president, find the vision, take the business where you need to. But as to the advice that he gave, there were a few things that he stressed. First of all, trust the numbers. I don't know that I appreciated the advice when I first got it, but I did heed it, which is to say the numbers, they're not emotional. They're just what they are. And so if you've got clear distinctions of this is profitable, this is expensive, this is making money, this isn't making money, it's cut and dry, it's black and white. And yeah, you can have moments of pause and you can have wisdom that can maybe give insights as to what's happening. That's fine, but at the end of the day, it's still the numbers. They either are or aren't doing what's expected, what was agreed to, what was needed. And if you manage to the numbers, you can tweak and address things in a more timely manner, and at the same time not get so emotionally caught up in what's happening. It's not personal. What's happening isn't necessarily a reflection of an individual being a good or bad person. It's just what's not and what is working, and that's what matters. And so managed by the numbers, that was a huge one to me. The other was just pay attention to the staff. We had a philosophy at the time, it was a STAR training program, And it was basically creating a culture of accountability. Everybody had a metric to which they were responsible for. And he was very good at saying, make sure it's clear at the end of the day what everyone is expected to do. It's not enough to just be busy. It's more important that you actually have something specific you're working towards and you're responsible for. And if you know what that is, everything else becomes clear as to, okay, this is a distraction from my end of day goal. And yeah, I was probably busy, but did I move the needle on the one thing that I'm responsible for? And if everybody's clear as to what's expected, it's easier to say either they did or didn't do their jobs.
This may be a little off topic, but
Okay.
in before we move off of the topic of Alan,
Mhm.
was there anything when he was the president of the company and you watched what he did, is there anything with you being the president of the company that you've emulated or wanted to, a tradition or his legacy that he left you that you wanted to keep going with?
Wow, it's a great question simply because so much has changed. I've been the president now for over a decade. And so I don't know how much remains from him. I'm sure there's nuances. Clearly we manage by the numbers. That was something he taught me. So I can clearly say that still is relevant. But we're no longer the same in the sense that initially we were all in an office. Everyone came to the office. We wore business attire Monday through Thursday, with Friday being a dress down day or a casual day, which was I didn't wear a tie. So that went away. I mean, I've got stories about that. That's actually a fun topic. Today, everyone works remotely. I have 2 people that work in the corporate office. Everyone else is working from home. We have people around the United States and now internationally that work for the business. And so it's a totally different work environment. The culture is different. And so yeah, a lot of the things that he instilled, I mean, on a quarterly basis, we got together and did an extracurricular activity. We had a family social that we did in the summer months. We had a couples dinner that we did in the fourth quarter. Just things along those lines, and they're hard, if not impossible, to emulate today. One of the things that I can say from a management style that he taught me, he was very big on accountability as it related to the numbers. And I think I'm, in my own way, still doing that. It's the numbers, and you know, it's the economy stupid. Well, no, it's the numbers, and we just focus on the numbers. And at the end of the day, we either did or didn't do what was needed or expected. And everybody's got their own goals, and then the company's got its goals. And if we just manage around that, I think it's clear whether or not people are doing their part. So I don't know if I've answered your question,
No,
but it comes back to the numbers.
Yeah, I love it. You touched on earlier about in the early days you had, especially because you're not a CPA, that you had this sense for a minute of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I am sure that there are so many people, as they're moving into the accounting field, as they're moving from being an accountant to an advisor, like that occurs in people's lives every day. So what would you say to people about imposter syndrome and how to get past that?
So first of all, it's real. I've experienced it. I think we experience it in our lives at different stages as we're stepping into new roles or responsibilities. You know, it's no different than a parent. One minute you're a spouse, the next minute you're a mother or a father. Well, what changed? Well, you had a baby. Okay, now be a father, now be a mother. There's sometimes you just have to step into it and kind of own the responsibility that you have. That's part of it. When I became president of the company, it was, okay, I'm the president. I can't pass the buck. It stops with me. People are looking for direction from me. And I had to accept the fact that there was no one else to turn to. There were some things I couldn't delegate. And that was very big to me. And as it related to imposter syndrome, it was realizing who else is going to make the decision? Who else is going to do this? And I had to respect the fact that at the end of the day, I had to go to sleep with myself and my conscience and feel good about the decisions I was making. Now, as it relates to imposter syndrome, it's why would anyone trust or believe me? What right do I have to say or expect this of others? And when it comes to accounting, bookkeeping, one of the things that you've got to understand is you've got the skills, you know how to do things, you've got the support with universal accounting. You should be in a position where you're able to say, here's the quality of service that I'd like to provide to my clients, and I'm going to deliver it. It's not a question of whether or not you have in the past, it's a question of moving forward, will you or won't you? And so when I started to realize from an imposter syndrome situation that I experienced, It's the realization of there's only one person that I need permission from, and it's me. That's it. And so in one real example, I was at a conference, I was in the audience, I was hearing someone from the stage teach some things, talk about some things that I felt I had experience in. In fact, I believed I had more than the person on the stage. I had more credibility than they had. I could have said what they were saying on the stage. And I'm sitting in the audience, yes, trying to be open-minded, as I was explaining earlier, but realizing, know that, check that, I would add this, I would say more about this. And I was realizing I have a lot to offer. I have a lot to say. I have a lot I can do with my own clients, with my own employees. I need to now own that I don't need any more permission or experience than I'm willing to give to myself. And the moment I was willing to say, I can do this, I can deliver what I would hope people would expect. And it may not be easy, but I can do it. And the moment I gave myself permission, from that point forward, I didn't feel in that scope, in that space, imposter syndrome. Because again, at the end of the day, I think it was the only person I needed permission from was myself. Now there's the old adage, fake it till you make it. I think that's very true. Just act the part, play the part. What do you think is supposed to happen in this situation? Do it. And all of a sudden, when you start taking those two things and marrying them, the imposter syndrome starts to fall away because you're being genuine and true to yourself. You're not an imposter, you're you. And that's where all starts to gel and make sense, and I'm able to be genuine.
I love it. So that instant in your life, that experience helped you gain confidence. Were there other things in the company or in your experience that helped you gain the confidence to lead the way you wanted to?
Yeah, I was in numerous settings, whether it was in the company with employees or with my clients, where questions would be asked, people would turn to me and look, and by darn, I actually had a good answer. I actually had something insightful to say. I actually had something that could contribute, and people were respectful of the answer. They felt that the answer was appropriate, and I started to realize I actually know what I'm talking about. I actually know what I'm doing here. I don't need to second guess myself anymore. And those situations were very helpful, one after another, and they just build, and that confidence really started to set in. I was no longer faking it. I was clearly capable of doing what I thought was needed, and in those situations, I was confident in my responses. So yeah, I kind of looked in the mirror and realized I actually do know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so I know that Alan wrote some books, and I believe you helped him in that process. Were those books a contributor to building your confidence?
100%. The two books that you're asking about, In the Black and Red to Black, we lived those principles. We applied those principles in the business. And a lot of those principles were instrumental to our getting the Utah 100 accolades that we received, the Inc. 500, 5,000 accolades that we were receiving. Those business principles are what we were following. So when Alan actually took it upon himself to say, okay, I need to write some books to capture this, we put our heads together and came up with, okay, how can we take what we're experiencing and doing and put it into a book format? And he really did a great job taking and more or less encapsulating the 9 principles to make a business profitable in the book In the Black. I felt it represented very well what we were doing in the business. And then from that became Red to Black. Red to Black representing cash flow. When you're not in the black, running positive, how do you turn the business around? What's that process that you follow to actually make a business profitable again? Fix the business model. And these were things that we had experienced and done. And so to take and use us and our clients as case studies and now record, here are the steps that we were following that were proving to be effective, it was a perfect way to write a book and now share what we had done. You'll sometimes, when you talk to me, hear me reference Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and there's the top of it where it's self-actualization. And it's the idea that you all of a sudden realize I can give back. I've learned enough, I've accomplished enough, I can give back. And that's what I think Alan was doing with these books, In the Black and Red to Black. He was essentially saying, we've perfected the recipe, the system to success in business, now let's share it. And so when we spent the time now collaborating on how to write the book, what the chapters would look like, what were the talking points, this is what kind of came of it. And why it's relevant to me is because it was one thing to be part of the book writing experience, but when I became president of the company, those books were the how-to guides for me to run the business. See, it was probably a year or more into the business that it dawned on me, I've got the manual to do this. Because initially, I was trying to find my path, and I was trying to do it not Alan's way. I was trying to be different. But he'd already written the book and given me more or less the playbook to be successful. So I went and I pulled out the book In the Black, and lo and behold, that was it. This was the secret sauce. And so I started to implement, and some of the challenges and struggles that we were facing a few years into my legacy, if you will, all of a sudden were easily remedied just by following the principles from the book In the Black. And then I went to Red to Black, and Red to Black addressed the cash flow things. Not that we were necessarily experiencing them, but it helped me avoid them. And all of a sudden, these principles, they were like the lesson manual to be a successful business. I love them. I use them with my clients all the time. I think the world of what we were able to accomplish in writing those 2 books.
Okay, so I know that accountability is important to you, a big factor in your life, in how you run the business. So I believe that the STAR program back in the day had to do with accountability. How has that played into you leading the company and into confidence?
Yeah, so we started this back a number of years ago, like a decade or more ago, to basically try and influence the culture that we were trying to create at Universal, and it still exists today. And it's based on this idea of creating a culture based on accountability. Everybody has a very specific expectation or a few key metrics that they're responsible for, and at the end of the day, you are or aren't doing your job, period. Well, we needed to kind of add to that and build on that. And it wasn't that we were doing it perfectly, but I felt we created a system that works for us. And it began to be something that we started to take to our clients. But it's essentially the STAR program, as you mentioned. STAR is an acronym. STAR starts with standards, S, standards. T is trust. We want to trust the people that we're working with. A is acknowledging their contributions and their kind of giving to the business where they contribute. And then R is recognition, celebrating the successes. But standards, that very first thing has 3 components. Tools, the tools to do the job. Training, are they able to use the tools effectively? And temperament. What we as a company can bring are the tools and the training, helping that individual feel confident that they can do what's expected of them. The temperament is what the employee is bringing. It's the attitude. Do they come with a positive, optimistic, abundant mindset or not? And if they do, they fit well into our culture. Well, when we have standards and everyone's expected to meet the standards, if they don't, we just look at the 3 things. Is it a reflection of the fact that they don't have the tools to do the job, the training to do the job, or the temperament to do it? They don't have the vision, the drive, the ambition for it. Those things become very telling. Trust. Are they people that we trust, that they're making decisions as we would make them? And if we lose that trust, we have a phrase, I've used it for years, you either change the people or you change the people. And one change is sometimes different and easier than another. But these things allowed us to manage the business with an understood culture within the organization that I think, even if everyone can't quote it as I have just now, I would believe that they could relate to it if explained and go, yeah, that's the environment in which I live. I know what's expected of me, I'm accountable for it, and I'm held to those accountabilities. And if I don't perform, I'm not surprised when people call me out. And that I think is very important, because on the flip side, I know what's responsible, or what I'm responsible for, I know what I'm expected to do, and when I do it, I know it's celebrated, it's recognized, it's acknowledged. And if people are feeling that, then I feel that we've created a healthy culture of accountability.
I think that's important awareness for you to have and for the employees to have.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people that I think come to work and feel busy, but when you can show why what they're doing contributes to the bigger picture, it matters. And there's some employees that we have work on projects, and they might be doing this month something different than they did 3 months ago, 6 months ago. But hopefully what I'm trusting they realize is they're the type of individuals that we trust with these projects, that we can move them from one thing to the next because we know that they can adapt well and they can get things done. Everybody plays their part, everybody has their strengths. But as a company, if we can leverage those, we can hopefully accelerate our movement towards whatever goal we're striving.
Okay, so when I first met you, it was at a business networking meeting,
Okay.
and you were there representing yourself as a business coach.
Yes.
So talk to me about your journey. How did that come about, and how has that played a role?
Huge. This is a big thing to me. So it's one thing to be the president of the company, teaching accounting skills, tax training, all these types of things. And then I go to the accounting conferences, like we were discussing, and at the conferences, I'm hearing for the last, say, 10 plus years, we need as a profession to offer more value to our clients. We need to be providing more value. Well, this value thing was brought up numerous times, but nobody was explaining what that looked like. How do you package that for the client? What are we delivering over months, years with the client that is this value? And more importantly, how do you charge for it? And nobody was really addressing this. And so I initially started hearing this and realized there's a void here. They're saying from the stage, we need to, as a profession, be more proactive. We need to be more future thinking, not historical as our profession typically is. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but you're not telling me what I'm supposed to be doing as a profession to service my clients in this way. So I went back and I realized I need to figure this out. So I literally started to work with clients in a CFO advisor capacity, not knowing what that was going to look like. And I realized I needed to figure out not only what it was that I was going to deliver, what's that experience like for my client, but what are they paying for this? Am I going to be paid fairly for this time and deliverable? Well, I had to figure out the pricing. I had to figure out what the time commitment was for this, and more importantly, what was being offered. And over that time, I became very aware of what people were paying for, what were the pain points that they were willing to say, I need a business coach. I became very aware of, okay, here's what they're willing to pay, and at the same time, here's what the user experience, the engagement would be. And it, over years, got defined to the point where I knew there are 5 things that I do with my clients. I help them first and foremost engage and manifest. I need them to articulate to me why they are in business. Why do they sacrifice like they do? What difference are they making in their market? Then I needed to understand their numbers. They needed to understand their numbers. And that experience going into the financials, the key performance indicators of their business, identifying those was huge. The next was increasing revenue. Most of the businesses I work with want top line increase. How do I just sell more stuff? And to help them there was huge. But the next thing became improving profits. How do I keep more of what I'm making? I'm making a lot, but I'm not keeping a lot. So everybody else is getting rich but me. And so how do they keep that profit? And then lastly, I've got a business, it's an asset. How do I build value in this asset? How do I have it so that it's sellable? And those 5 things became very much a key part of my messaging as it related to marketing, but then the deliverable as to what it is that the client I was working with was experiencing. And it just came down to how much time does that take and how much money can I charge for it? And as that model got really defined, I now had something I could take back to the marketplace as a school, because this was all with the intent of not just figuring it out, but packaging it in a way that I could take it to the accounting community and answer the question I was experiencing at the conference of how? How do you offer more value if every time I go to an accounting conference, they're saying that I'm lacking in what I'm doing for my clients and I need to step up my game? That technology is commoditizing the bookkeeping and tax services that I'm offering. How do I now differentiate the commodity that people are pricing to here's what's unique about what I offer as an accounting service? Well, all of a sudden now, I had something that I could offer, and that's more or less the beginnings of the Profit and Growth Expert training that we provide in the Universal Business Program that we offer.
And so now students can emulate what you've practiced and learned in their own businesses.
100%. Now that enigma of what does value mean, what does it look like, how do I become a CFO and advisor for my clients is very clear. The path to do this, the things that you need, you can sidestep and avoid this imposter syndrome by not just faking it till you make it. You can literally implement proven things that I've done with my clients now for a decade by emulating exactly what I've taught in the Profit and Growth Expert Program and the Universal Business Experience.
I think that's amazing. And for them to know that it's a proven process.
Yeah, it's not just theory, it's not just book smarts. I've been doing this with clients now for a decade and successfully had clients that have retained my services for years simply because they see that what we're doing does increase the value of their company.
How has becoming the face of UAC had a part in any of this?
That's funny. That's a funny question. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory to this. When we, back around 2002, 2003, sat down as a company, we were discussing what is the face of Universal. And back then we had decided, and this was very intentional, that it wasn't going to be a single individual. So there were a lot of programs out there that were like the Dale Carnegie, the Robert Kiyosaki, Zig Ziglar. There were just a lot of people out there that had companies, businesses built around individuals. And we said, well, all it takes is one person to have an accident, something happened, and then the entire company more or less implodes because they go away. Well, it works for them, but we chose to go a different direction. And it was simply to say universal accounting was going to be universal accounting. As a school, we were going to go to the marketplace, just offering a quality service that way. Knowing that, social media and internet comes into the scene 15, 20 years later. Here I am, the president, and we're pushing this idea of no one's the face, no one's going to be this persona of the business, and it's not working. We're struggling as it relates to our marketing and sales because there wasn't a face, there wasn't someone to relate to. And I fought this because I was part of that meeting 20 years ago. I knew why we were what we were. I'm the president. Am I going to change this? Has the marketplace changed enough that this needs to be reevaluated? And I pushed against it. I did not want to be that person on social media that had to share, here's what I did driving to work today, here's what I ate for lunch. That just didn't resonate with me. And I realize it's more than that, but I just didn't want to be that person walking around with a phone, holding out my arm, taking a picture with my phone everywhere I went. I didn't want to be that public figure. But I soon realized that in some way or another I had to be. And yeah, I've got a face for a camera. I'm good looking. But do I take it and make, to some level, my persona a vulnerable component to the company? And at some point I just realized it was no longer a choice. I had to. And it was a hard decision, but honestly, it wasn't hard after the decision. I'm a professional person, I'm a conservative person. I just needed to be true to myself. I needed to be comfortable in my own skin and not be something I wasn't. So I chose to be that, and I trusted that I would resonate with the people that would be drawn to me. And I felt that there were enough people like me and who would like me that it would be good for the business. So it's proven to be true. I've been me, I've been genuine, I've been authentic, and in being the business person that I am, the conservative person that I am, I feel that I just resonate with certain individuals in a certain way that they feel that this is relatable enough that they're willing to enroll. So I don't know that I did it the right way, I did it my way. And fortunately, it's actually resonated. So, long answer to your question. Initially, we did not see that the company needed to have a face. With social media and the way the internet and everything has evolved, clearly there needs to be a persona to the company, and I'm fortunately that individual today.
All right, so let's bring this full circle. We
Okay.
started talking about legacy.
Yeah.
So now that we've been through 25 years of experience and you're on the other end of things, I mean, there's still many years to come, but where are you now with your legacy? What's happened in the recent past, or what's yet to come?
So there's a few things. I started with the legacy, and I really believe this. The accounting profession needs a voice. They have so much information available to them about the business, the clients that they service, that we just need to be able to communicate it more effectively for our clients, the business owners, to make more well-informed business decisions. We're that individual, that communicator that takes the accounting information, the language of business, and gives it to the business owner in a way that they can use it. Well, that being said, I felt with all the communications I've had with my business clients and all the things that I witnessed that they were experiencing as it related to accounting, that I needed to write a book. The reason for the book was simply that I realized that the business owner's understanding of what accounting is different than the way that the accounting profession was describing themselves. When you asked a business owner, what's the role of a bookkeeper? What's the role of let's say an accountant? What's the purpose of hiring a tax preparer? What's the difference between a tax preparer and a tax strategist or tax planning person? They didn't have the same answers that if I went to an accounting professional, I said, tell me what a bookkeeper is. What do they do? What is an accountant? How do they differ from a bookkeeper? What's the difference between a tax preparer and a tax strategist? these people, as accounting professionals, struggle to explain and articulate those distinct roles. How could they even now articulate it in their marketing and communications with clients to distinguish, here's what you're paying for when it relates to bookkeeping versus here's what you're paying for as it relates to accounting? There was this huge chasm as to vocabulary, pricing. It just was confusing, and me being in the middle of it, I felt I needed to try and articulate an answer. And so I wrote the book, Your Strategic Accountant. I wrote it to the business owner. Your strategic accountant this is what you need in order to be successful as a business owner as you lean into the accounting profession. Here's what the profession can offer you to be successful. But indirectly, the book was written to the accounting profession to say, we as a profession need to actually do a better job of not only explaining the differences between the services, but providing these services clearly and distinctly to our clients. Because I feel that sometimes bookkeeping is incomplete, accounting is incomplete. We got paid for it, but we didn't fully meet the needs of the client as it related to that role. And so if we're actually able to now bridge that communication barrier, set the expectations, clearly have the client pay for what it is they're expecting, then at the end of the day, the business owner's happy and the accounting professional is happy. And as it relates to the different roles, the bookkeeper isn't struggling because the business owner thought that they would also be an accountant. The tax preparer isn't struggling because the business owner thought that they would also be a tax strategist. That's been clearly defined both by the accountant in the terms of their arrangement, but also the business owner understands the distinction between the two. I feel that that's hugely important, and that's where I wrote the book, Your Strategic Accountant. That brings me to the next book, which is Your Profit and Growth Expert. Initially, this was supposed to be one book. It turned into two, because in the business coaching that I was performing, I realized that many business owners struggle to understand what's the difference between a life coach, a business coach, an advisor. What's the difference between a person that may be a mentor versus a consultant versus, let's say, an advisor and a coach? There's 4 different types of people. Well, if I'm a mentor, I'm not a coach. If I'm a consultant, I'm not an advisor. And describing those I felt were essential, partly for the business owner. Do they need a mentor? Do they need a coach? Do they need an advisor? When you're offering these types of business services, are the services you're providing advisory services? Are they consultant services? Are they coach services? And if we can better communicate what it is we're expecting, what it is we're doing, and what we're paying for, I think we're going to have happier people, because at the end of the day, the client is trying to just grow their business and work on themselves. And they have certain needs, but we oftentimes, I think, have too much gray area as an accounting profession as to how we're offering this additional service or value. And if we can articulate it better and set those expectations, manage to those expectations, we're going to have happy customers. We're going to be happy doing the work that we're doing because it's within the scope that we sold. So those 2 books became a very big part of what I've written to contribute to my legacy, simply because I felt that that's the hole that I saw as I was working with business owners.
Wonderful. Well, talk to me about where GrowCon lands in the whole conversation.
All right, GrowCon, this is a big deal to me. GrowCon, I feel, is that place where, as accounting professionals, we can meet with peers who are likewise doing what we're doing. So let me kind of expound on this. GrowCon is one more conference among many. So how does it distinguish itself? It's specifically an event for owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses, period. And it's here as an event that we're trying to address the needs that are unique to them as owners. Hearing from the stage, experts telling us, here's how you can work on your business as it relates to growing the business, getting clients, niching your services, offering quality accounting services, working efficiently, profitably. It's all based on what I've clearly learned from the book In the Black as mapping the business. And if when they map their business, they learn, here's how I can market, here's how I can offer quality services, and here's how I can profitably do the work, they're going to be running a slick operation, what I refer to as the premier accounting firm in their area. And the reason why the event is so important to me is it's partly because I think at the end of the day, business is a personal affair. It's people interacting with people. And it's not from a distance. Yes, technology has afforded us the ability to work remotely. I totally get that. But we need to be able to gather together. And I feel once a year at GrowCon is the perfect venue to actually come together and work with our peers. Collaborate, meet, connect, network. Those things you can't do remotely. I don't care how many people prefer to, whether it's a cost savings thing, a time savings thing because they didn't have to travel. At the end of the day, we all went on the computer at a remote meeting, multitask, get distracted. Whatever the thing we're doing is, we're not fully engaged. But when you travel somewhere and you set down all those distractions and you are fully engaged, you'll get the nuggets that you weren't expecting. And oftentimes at a live event, it's more than just what's said from the stage. It's the things before and after the presentation, meeting with the person at your table, meeting with them at perhaps the lunch or dinner. Those are where the epiphanies really take place, and you leave the event not expecting these things, but perhaps saying that they were the most valuable thing you left with.
That is so important. Okay, so winding this whole thing up, if you have one final thought in the whole conversation of legacy, what would you tell the owner of the bookkeeping, accounting, or tax business as it relates to their legacy?
Two things. You need to figure out how your business is not just different than your competitors, the other bookkeepers, accountants, tax preparers out there, but the experience that you're offering to your clients, why it matters to them. What are you uniquely offering them that they perhaps cannot get somewhere else? It's the attention, it's the quality of service, it's the interest, the curiosity you have in their business. As your own legacy, what is it that's special about your experience, your background, who you are, and how you bring it to your clients? The second thing I would say is, as a legacy, again, as an accounting profession, we have a voice and we need to raise the voice. We need to be more aware of what's going on with our clients as it relates to the accounting information and be willing to share that. Here's what I'm observing. Here's what I'm noticing. We need to be able to say, therefore what? Here's the information. What do I do to use this to make better business decisions? And as we work with our clients and volunteer this information, give it to them, we're going to find that they now see us as an asset to their success. We're not just some liability, some expense that they pay because they have to. They're going to appreciate more and more the services that we're providing and be more interested in paying us for what we're doing, growing their business and paying us for that service that we're providing. That's where I think the big difference lies. That is my legacy, my hope as it relates to the accounting profession.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
You bet. And always remember, if it's about accounting, it's universal.